There is a quiet tension that lives beneath your daily decisions. It does not always announce itself loudly. It appears in small hesitations, in the way your breath shortens before you speak, in the subtle doubt that follows an idea before it fully forms. You move through your life making choices, reacting to circumstances, hoping for improvement. Yet something feels divided. Part of you reaches forward. Another part quietly holds back. You may call it caution. You may call it realism. But beneath the surface, it is often belief operating unnoticed. You have been told that belief is something you choose deliberately, a thought you repeat, a doctrine you adopt, a statement you affirm. Yet your lived experience suggests something deeper. You can say, I believe everything will work out, and still feel your body bracing for disappointment. You can say, I believe I am worthy, and still flinch at the smallest sign of rejection. Words alone do not reveal belief. Your nervous system does. This is where confusion begins. Because if belief were merely a conscious opinion, change would be simple. You would select a new thought and repeat it until reality complied. But belief is not surface thought. It is the state of being you return to when no one is watching. It is the quiet orientation of your awareness. It is the atmosphere you inhabit internally. And atmosphere organizes experience. If you live inwardly in anticipation of struggle, you will interpret neutral events as obstacles. If you live inwardly in quiet trust, you will interpret complexity as navigation rather than threat. The same circumstance, filtered through different states, becomes a different experience. Belief does not merely comment on reality. It shapes your participation in it. There is a reason, Scripture says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The heart here is not fleeting emotion. It is the center of identity, the place where thought and feeling converge into conviction. Conviction is stabilized thought. Stabilized thought becomes state. State becomes lens. Lens shapes life. You may notice this in small, ordinary moments. You send a message and do not receive a response immediately. In one state, you assume disinterest and feel contraction in your chest. You walk into a room and notice two people laughing. In one state, you assume exclusion and withdraw slightly. You receive feedback on your work. In one state, you hear confirmation of inadequacy rather than guidance for growth. These reactions do not arise from the events themselves. They arise from the state you are already inhabiting. This is the deeper principle. Belief is not what you say you think. Belief is the identity your body has accepted as normal. An identity silently organizes your world. When you believe you are overlooked, you unconsciously scan for evidence of being ignored. When you believe you are supported, you unconsciously scan for evidence of care. The brain's filtering systems operate according to expectation. Expectation arises from belief. So belief shapes perception long before conscious interpretation. Yet this is not merely neurological. There is a spiritual dimension to this law. Christ-centered mysticism speaks of abiding. Abide in me. To abide is to remain in a state. When you remain in a state of fear, you experience the world as unstable. When you remain in a state of love, you experience the world as relational. When you remain in a state of sufficiency, you experience provision differently. Belief is abiding, and what you abide in becomes fruitful. Many attempt to change outcomes without examining where they abide. They attempt to increase income while abiding in scarcity. They attempt to cultivate love while abiding in rejection. They attempt to step into purpose while abiding in self-doubt. This creates friction. The outer goal conflicts with the inner residence. So what is the power of belief? It is not the power to force reality. It is the power to stabilize identity. When identity stabilizes, behavior aligns naturally. When behavior aligns, circumstances begin to reflect coherence. Manifestation is not manipulation. It is correspondence. To understand this, observe how effortlessly certain beliefs operate in your life. You do not strain to believe gravity exists. You do not rehearse arguments to believe tomorrow will come. These beliefs are unquestioned. They are embedded. Because they are embedded, they require no emotional intensity. In the same way, when a belief about yourself becomes embedded, I am not good with money. I am always the one left behind. I never finish what I start. It functions automatically. You do not consciously choose it each day. You simply inhabit it and life arranges around it. This arrangement is subtle. If you believe you are bad with money, you may avoid learning about finances, miss opportunities for growth, or feel anxiety when managing resources. These small behaviors accumulate. The outcome appears to confirm the belief. The cycle reinforces itself. Belief shapes state. State shapes action. Action shapes outcome. Outcome reinforces belief. This loop continues until awareness interrupts it. Awareness is where freedom begins. When you begin to observe your reactions without merging with them, you create space between experience and identity. You notice there is anxiety here. Instead of declaring, I am anxious, you notice there is doubt. Instead of concluding, I am incapable. This subtle shift prevents temporary states from hardening into identity. Most limiting beliefs were formed in moments of intensity. A rejection in childhood, a failure in adolescence, a betrayal in adulthood. The mind sought stability by forming a conclusion. This is who I am. That conclusion became a protective narrative. Over time, protection became identity. Protection is understandable, but what protected you once may now confine you. The power of belief lies not only in forming identity, but in revising it. Revising belief does not mean pretending the past did not happen. It means choosing not to let the past define the present state of being. It means recognizing that belief is sustained by repetition, and repetition can be redirected. But redirection must be calm. If you attempt to overpower an old belief with aggressive affirmation, you create internal resistance. The subconscious resists what feels forced. Instead, belief shifts through gentle, consistent exposure to a new state. For example, if you have believed I am always behind, you do not need to declare, I am perfectly on track with intensity. You might begin by noticing moments of competence, completing a task quietly, meeting a commitment, learning something new. You allow these small evidences to soften the old narrative. Or if you have believed I am unworthy of love, you might begin by accepting small gestures of kindness without deflecting them. You might sit with the discomfort of being appreciated and allow it to normalize. These tiny adjustments recalibrate identity. Belief changes when experience and identity realign. This is why imagination, used gently, becomes powerful. When you imagine yourself as steady, capable, supported, not with dramatic exaggeration, but with quiet normalcy, you introduce your system to a new possibility. If repeated without strain, this possibility becomes familiar. Familiarity reduces resistance, and over time, familiarity becomes belief. Yet the deepest shift occurs when belief is rooted not in self-generated fantasy, but in divine alignment. When you anchor identity in the awareness that your being is sourced in God, not in performance, not in approval, belief stabilizes differently. It is no longer dependent on external validation. If God is for us, who can be against us? This is not bravado, it is orientation. It is the recognition that identity grounded in divine presence is not fragile. When you believe you are sustained by something greater than circumstance, you respond to life with steadiness. Steadiness influences perception. Perception influences choice. Choice influences outcome. And so the power of belief becomes visible. You speak differently when you believe your voice matters. You invest differently when you believe growth is possible. You forgive differently when you believe love is abundant. These shifts are not dramatic. They are cumulative. Cumulative change reshapes a life. Notice that belief does not require constant emotional intensity. In fact, intense emotion can signal insecurity. True belief is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. It simply remains. Like a foundation beneath a house, it supports everything without drawing attention. So how do you know what you truly believe? Observe your automatic reactions. Where does your mind go first in uncertainty? Toward fear or trust? Where does your body tighten? Where does it relax? Your first instinct often reveals your embedded belief. Do not judge what you discover. Simply become aware. Awareness alone begins to loosen rigid identity. When you see a belief clearly, it loses some of its unconscious authority. You realize that it is not you. It is something you have been carrying. From here, you can choose deliberately what you will continue to carry. Choosing belief is not about denying difficulty. It is about selecting the state from which you will meet difficulty. You can face challenge believing I am alone, or believing I am guided. You can face complexity believing, this will overwhelm me, or believing I can navigate this step by step. The external situation may remain, but your experience of it transforms. Transformation begins within. As you practice returning to a chosen belief calmly, repeatedly, your nervous system recalibrates. The body learns safety and trust. The mind learns flexibility in uncertainty. The heart learns openness without constant defense. Over time, the belief becomes less effortful. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly. It feels natural. You wake with a different baseline. You approach tasks with quiet confidence. You interpret delays with patience rather than panic. This is the power of belief embodied. It is not spectacle. It is coherence. When belief, attention, and identity align, life flows with less internal friction. You are not fighting yourself while trying to move forward. You are unified, and unity is powerful. There will still be fluctuation. Doubt may resurface. Old narratives may whisper, but they no longer define you. You see them as passing weather rather than permanent climate. You return to your chosen belief without drama. Return is key. Each return strengthens identity. Each return deepens alignment. Each return trains consciousness. Eventually, you realize that belief is not something you possess. It is something you practice. And through practice, it becomes who you are. So now, become still. Feel the quiet presence beneath your thoughts. Ask yourself gently, what state have I been abiding in? Without shame, without urgency, just clarity. And then, from this clarity, choose deliberately. Choose a belief aligned with truth, not inflated, not performative, but steady. I am supported. I am capable of growth. I am guided in my steps. Let the statement feel calm. Let your body soften into it. Remain there, not forcing emotion, not demanding proof, simply abiding. This is faith as orientation. This is belief as identity. And as you remain, life will respond in correspondence to the state you consistently inhabit. Not because you shouted, not because you strained, but because you aligned. So guard your inner residence. Notice where you dwell, and dwell deliberately. The power of belief is not in convincing the world. It is in consenting to a state of being. And that state, quietly and faithfully, shapes the world you experience. Rest in that. Be still, and know what you believe, not by what you say, but by who you are becoming. Stay with the simplicity of becoming. There is something profoundly stabilizing about recognizing that belief is not a sudden declaration, but a gradual embodiment. You do not wake one morning transformed by force of will. You wake one morning and notice that your first thought is softer than it used to be. You notice that your shoulders do not rise as quickly in anticipation of difficulty. You notice that you no longer rehearse the same internal arguments before speaking. These are signs that belief has shifted beneath the surface. Belief reshapes your baseline. Your baseline is the state you return to when nothing specific is demanding your attention. It is the tone of your inner world in ordinary moments. If your baseline has been tension, you have interpreted neutrality as potential threat. If your baseline becomes steadiness, you begin interpreting neutrality as openness. This change in baseline alters your entire experience of time. When you believe that life is against you, the future feels heavy. When you believe that life is working with you, the future feels spacious. The events ahead may be unknown in both cases, yet your orientation toward them differs. Orientation determines how you walk into what has not yet happened, and how you walk into something often shapes how it unfolds. There is a quiet, self-fulfilling quality to belief, not because you control every outcome, but because you influence your responses. A person who believes they will be heard speaks differently than one who expects dismissal. A person who believes growth is possible persists differently than one who expects failure. The belief modifies posture, tone, endurance. Posture communicates before words do. Tone communicates before logic does. Endurance communicates before results appear. These communications ripple outward. Others respond to the steadiness of someone who believes in their own groundedness. Opportunities align with those who carry expectation without desperation. Even in subtle social exchanges, belief shapes the field of interaction. Yet the most significant transformation remains internal. When you believe in divine sufficiency, you stop measuring yourself against fluctuating standards. You stop interpreting every comparison as a verdict. You stop seeking constant reassurance. The nervous system settles because identity is no longer under evaluation. Evaluation exhausts. Coherence restores. As coherence deepens, you may feel grief for the years spent living from constricted beliefs. Allow that grief to surface gently. It is not regret, it is recognition. Recognition that you once carried narratives that limited your experience of yourself. But even that recognition can be held within compassion. You believe what you needed to believe to make sense of your past. Now you are free to believe differently because your awareness has expanded. Expansion is not betrayal of who you were. It is maturation of who you are. In this maturation, humility remains essential. The power of belief is not a license for arrogance. It does not elevate you above others. It aligns you with responsibility. If your state influences your experience, then tending your inner life becomes an act of stewardship, not for control, but for integrity. Integrity means inner and outer alignment. When what you believe about yourself matches how you live, there is harmony. You no longer speak confidence while privately rehearsing inadequacy. You no longer present calm while internally spiraling. You become transparent to yourself. Transparency brings peace. Peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the absence of inner division. When belief and identity agree, you move with clarity even in complexity. Decisions may still require discernment, but they no longer carry the same self-doubt. There is a deep psychological truth here. The brain seeks consistency. When your behavior contradicts your belief, tension arises. If you believe you are incapable, yet attempt bold action, anxiety increases. But if you gradually reshape belief toward capability, bold action feels less threatening. The internal narrative and external movement align. This alignment reduces cognitive strain. Reduced strain frees attention. Freed attention enhances creativity. Creativity opens pathways previously unseen. Thus, belief, quietly adjusted, can alter the trajectory of a life. Yet remember, this is not about perfection. There will be days when old beliefs resurface strongly. Stress can reactivate earlier narratives. In those moments, gentleness is more powerful than criticism. Criticism reinforces the old identity of inadequacy. Gentleness reinforces the new identity of growth. You might notice, I slipped back into fear today, and respond with curiosity rather than condemnation. You might ask, what state did I return to? And then choose again. This repeated choosing builds resilience. Resilience is evidence of belief becoming stable. Stable belief does not collapse at the first sign of contradiction. It holds steady through fluctuation. It trusts process without demanding immediate clarity. Trust is not blind optimism. It is a disciplined return to alignment. And alignment is a daily practice. In the morning, before the day's demands accumulate, you can anchor yourself in a chosen state, not through lengthy ritual, but through quiet awareness. Feel your breath, sense your body, recall the belief you are cultivating. Let it settle into your posture before you engage the world. Throughout the day, when tension arises, pause briefly. Notice your reaction. Ask gently, what am I believing right now? If the belief is misaligned, adjust. Not with force, with clarity. At night, reflect without judgment. Observe where you remained aligned and where you drifted. This reflection is not for self-punishment. It is for recalibration. Over time, recalibration becomes natural. As belief stabilizes, you may notice a subtle joy emerging. Not excitement, not euphoria, a quiet joy. The joy of moving through life without constant internal conflict. The joy of trusting yourself. The joy of feeling rooted. Rootedness changes how you relate to others. You become less reactive, less defensive, less eager to prove. Conversations feel less like battlegrounds and more like exchanges. You listen more fully because you are not preoccupied with self-protection. You speak more clearly because you are not filtering every word through fear. This relational shift reflects inner belief. When you believe you are safe in your identity, you do not need to guard it so fiercely. Safety allows openness. Openness invites connection. Connection enriches experience. Thus, the power of belief extends beyond personal success. It reshapes relational environments. It influences families, workplaces, communities. A person rooted in steady belief carries an atmosphere of calm that others can feel. But even here, humility guides. You are not responsible for controlling others' experiences. You are responsible for tending your own state. Influence arises naturally from coherence, not from effort to manage perceptions. So remain attentive to your inner dwelling. Where you dwell becomes your default. Let your default be aligned with truth. Truth that you are sustained. Truth that growth is possible. Truth that divine presence is nearer than fear suggests. As this truth becomes embodied belief, you will notice that your relationship with uncertainty changes. You may not know every outcome, but you trust your capacity to navigate. You may not control every variable, but you trust that you are not alone within them. And that trust quiets the mind. A quiet mind perceives more clearly. Clear perception reduces unnecessary suffering. Reduced suffering allows deeper presence. Presence reveals beauty previously overlooked. You begin to see that belief has not only shaped external outcomes, but has transformed your quality of awareness. You experience more of the moment because you are not preoccupied with defending identity. This is subtle freedom. Freedom from constant self-justification. Freedom from habitual pessimism. Freedom from the need to predict failure. It is not dramatic liberation. It is gentle release. And in that release, your life unfolds with greater coherence. So continue. Continue observing your inner residence. Continue choosing belief with care. Continue returning without shame. Let belief become less about forcing change and more about aligning with who you are in divine consciousness. Let it settle into your bones. Let it inform your breathing. Let it guide your steps without fanfare. And as it does, you will find that the power of belief was never about controlling the world. It was about unifying yourself, unifying thought, feeling, identity, and faith into one steady orientation. From that unity, life organizes with less resistance. From that unity, action becomes natural. From that unity, transformation unfolds quietly. Rest there, remain there, and let your becoming continue without urgency, grounded in the steady power of belief embodied in who you are. Let this embodiment become quieter still. There is a stage in this unfolding where you no longer feel the need to speak often about belief at all. It has moved beneath language. It is no longer something you are trying to hold in place. It is holding you. You walk through your day with a subtle continuity of self that does not fracture under minor stress. Continuity is sacred. When you are internally continuous, you are the same person in solitude and in company, the same person in success and in inconvenience, the same person when affirmed and when misunderstood. This consistency signals that belief has stabilized into identity. Identity, rooted in divine sufficiency, does not fluctuate with circumstance. This does not mean you become emotionally flat. You still feel joy, disappointment, anticipation, fatigue. But beneath these movements, there is a steady undercurrent. Like a deep river beneath surface ripples, your core remains undisturbed. That depth is cultivated. It is cultivated each time you refuse to let a passing emotion redefine you. It is cultivated each time you decline to narrate yourself as powerless. It is cultivated each time you respond from alignment rather than impulse. Impulse is often shaped by old belief. Alignment is shaped by chosen belief. The difference can be felt in the body. Impulse feels urgent, reactive, narrow. Alignment feels measured, spacious, deliberate. The more you practice choosing alignment, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the pause between stimulus and response lengthens just enough for awareness to enter. In that pause, belief is reaffirmed. This reaffirmation may be silent, a slight softening of the jaw, a deeper breath, a refusal to escalate internally. These micro-adjustments accumulate. They signal to your nervous system that you are safe in your identity. Safety allows integration. Integration means that belief is no longer confined to spiritual reflection. It permeates practical life. It shapes how you schedule your time, how you handle conflict, how you manage resources, how you rest. Rest becomes especially significant. When belief is unstable, rest feels unsafe. The mind continues rehearsing problems, The body remains alert. But when belief stabilizes in trust, rest becomes restorative. You are able to pause without fearing collapse. You are able to sleep without mentally preparing for failure. This shift in rest deepens everything else. A rested mind perceives accurately. Accurate perception reduces unnecessary fear. Reduced fear supports wiser decisions. Wiser decisions reinforce belief. Thus, the cycle strengthens in the direction of coherence. You may also notice that comparison begins to loosen its grip. When belief is fragile, comparison feels threatening. Another's success appears to diminish your own possibility. But when belief is rooted in divine alignment, comparison loses urgency. You recognize that your path unfolds according to your identity, not according to someone else's timeline. This recognition quiets envy. It replaces it with appreciation or neutrality. Neutrality is underrated. Neutrality means you are not constantly measuring yourself against external markers. You can witness others' progress without internal collapse. You can celebrate without self-rejection. This emotional stability arises from belief that your worth and trajectory are secure. Security in identity frees attention. Freed attention can return to what matters. You begin investing energy in growth rather than in self-defense. You refine skills. You deepen relationships. You explore creativity. These actions are no longer attempts to prove your value. They are expressions of it. Expression feels different from proof. Proof is anxious. Expression is natural. The power of belief, then, is not primarily about acquiring desired outcomes. It is about transforming your mode of participation in life. When you participate from grounded belief, even setbacks carry instruction rather than condemnation. Instruction invites learning. Condemnation invites withdrawal. Learning expands capacity. Withdrawal contracts possibility. As belief shifts, your response to failure changes. Instead of concluding, "This confirms my inadequacy," you ask, "What is being refined here?" This question opens space. Space allows resilience. Resilience sustains progress. There is also an emerging gentleness toward others. When you understand how deeply belief shapes behavior, you see that many people act from unseen narratives. Harshness often arises from fear. Control often arises from insecurity. Defensiveness often arises from old wounds. This awareness does not excuse harm, but it softens personal resentment. Softness protects your coherence. Bitterness fractures identity. When you cling to resentment, you temporarily adopt a state of hostility. That state influences your perception and experience. But when you release resentment, not by denying pain, but by refusing to let it define you, you return to alignment. Alignment feels lighter. Lighter does not mean naive. It means unburdened by unnecessary inner conflict. This lightness begins to influence how you plan your future. You set goals from clarity rather than from panic. You pursue growth from curiosity rather than from desperation. The timeline becomes less oppressive because your identity is not suspended on its fulfillment. Time feels different when belief is stable. You are less hurried, less frantic, more attentive. Attentiveness enriches ordinary moments. You taste your food more fully. You listen more closely. You notice subtle beauty. These experiences were always available, but fragmented belief prevented you from inhabiting them. A divided mind cannot rest in the present. A unified belief allows presence. Presence is fertile ground. In presence, inspiration arises naturally. Solutions appear unforced. Conversations flow more easily. Creativity surfaces without strain. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is the natural byproduct of reduced internal noise. When belief aligns with truth, the mind is less cluttered by self-doubt. Clarity increases. Clarity supports wise action. Wise action shapes environment. Over months and years, this quiet process reshapes your life more profoundly than dramatic bursts of motivation ever could. Motivation fluctuates. Belief stabilizes. Stabilized belief becomes character. Character influences destiny. Yet, even here, humility remains central. You are not mastering life through belief. You are cooperating with divine law. The same principle that organizes your inner world organizes the outer world. As within, so without. Not as a slogan, but as lived correspondence. When your inner world is ordered, when belief attention, and identity agree, your outer life gradually reflects that order. Not perfectly, not instantly, but steadily. And if chaos appears externally, your internal order becomes a refuge rather than a casualty. You can navigate disruption without losing yourself. You can adapt without dissolving. You can grieve without despairing. This resilience is the quiet fruit of belief embodied. So continue tending it, not obsessively, not anxiously, simply faithfully. Notice where you dwell. Notice the tone of your inner dialogue. Notice the state you default to in uncertainty. And when necessary, return. Return to sufficiency. Return to trust. Return to the awareness that your identity is not at the mercy of circumstance. Let this return become so natural that it no longer feels like effort. Let belief become the steady ground beneath your steps. Let it shape your posture, your pace, your perspective. And in time, you will look back and see that the power of belief did not transform you through spectacle. It transformed you through consistency, through small daily alignments, through gentle corrections, through repeated returns. And you will recognize that the greatest change was not in what you acquired. It was in who you became. Unified, steady, attentive, rooted. Remain there now. Feel the quiet stability within you. Let your breath settle into it. Let your mind soften into it. Let your identity rest in it. And know that from this unified belief, life will continue to unfold in coherent rhythm shaped not by force, but by the steady state you have chosen to inhabit. And now, allow everything to settle into stillness. There is nothing further to analyze, nothing further to construct, no final technique to master. Just this quiet awareness that belief is no longer something you are trying to generate. It is something you are choosing to embody. Feel the simplicity of that. Belief is the state you return to. It is the posture you inhabit when circumstances are unclear. It is the tone of your inner voice when no one else is speaking. It is the silent agreement you hold about who you are and how life meets you. Let that agreement become gentle. Let it become steady. You do not need dramatic certainty. You need coherence. Coherence between what you say and what you sense. Coherence between what you hope and what you accept as possible. Coherence between your identity and the divine ground from which it arises. When belief is coherent, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, perception clears. When perception clears, response becomes wise. When response becomes wise, life reorganizes naturally. There is no rush in this process. The seed does not strain to become the tree. It simply grows in alignment with its nature. And you, in the same way, grow in alignment with what you repeatedly consent to as true. So as we close, return to the most basic awareness. You are here. You are breathing. You are conscious. Before every label, before every role, before every ambition you are. From this simple I am, belief takes shape. Choose carefully what you attach to it, not with fear, with reverence. If you attach fear, you will experience contraction. If you attach trust, you will experience expansion. If you attach insufficiency, you will experience striving. If you attach sufficiency, you will experience steadiness. The power of belief is not in controlling events. It is in shaping the state from which you meet them. And that state, sustained over time, becomes the atmosphere of your life. So guard your atmosphere. Tend it quietly. When doubt arises, notice and return. When old narratives surface, soften and choose again. Let your belief be rooted in divine presence rather than in shifting appearances. Let it be calm. Let it be grounded. Let it be lived rather than loudly proclaimed. And then rest. Rest in the knowing that you do not need to force your becoming. You need only remain faithful to the state you have chosen. Belief will do its quiet work. Identity will stabilize. Perception will refine. Life will respond. Be still now. Feel the steadiness within you. Let your final thought be simple and unstrained. I am aligned. And from that alignment, everything unfolds.